We know the date. Starship Flight 4 potential launch date. It won't happen in May? Massive changes to the mission profile, Raptor reignition scrubbed? Rocket Factory Augsburg hot fires their first rocket, Blue Origin returns to crewed flight. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. Flight 4 is coming. We're entering a phase where bits of information about the next launch pop up randomly. Our job in this phase is to collect all of them to give you a clear picture of what's happening at Starbase. Want to know more? Let's do this, follow me. Today our journey begins at the orbital launch site, where in less than 2 weeks we may see another launch of Starship. Before that, however, there are still some things that have to be crossed off the checklist. Starting at the orbital tank farm, the scrapping of the vertical tanks continues. The second nitrogen tank is virtually gone, and recently workers removed the last remaining one. Depending on the pace of work, we may even see the removal of a liquid oxygen tank before the fourth Starship leaves the pad. Seeing all of them gone before the next flight, however, is unlikely. Surprisingly, removing the perlite that's between the tank and its shell takes a lot more time than you'd think. To remove all the insulation, you need dozens, possibly close to 100 of Vacal trucks. One thing I am always wondering is if there aren't any bigger trucks. These Vacal trucks are tiny. No matter if the vertical tanks are gone or not, SpaceX likely isn't using them anymore, so it doesn't really affect the mission itself. Speaking of moving behind the orbital tank farm, you can see a beautiful Flight 4 full stack. This pair, Booster 11 and Ship 29, are among the last prototypes from the Block 1 generation, which will be replaced by Block 2 later this year. Before that, however, there are still several prototypes capable of flight, so rather than scrapping them, SpaceX might as well gather some flight data. After our photographer John captured a lot of ground support equipment testing, the road at Starbase was closed on the 20th. As always, the site and the entire Boca Chica village were evacuated for safety reasons. Then just before 9 AM local time, propellant began to flow into the prototype's tanks. We saw a similar test a few days prior, but it ended up being only a partial fill. This time, however, we were in for the real deal. The fueling process continued for about 45 minutes, after which the vehicle was full of liquid methane and liquid oxygen. Thanks to the improvements made before Flight 3, SpaceX managed to complete this test in record time. You might be wondering, why is this so important? For example, filling NASA's SLS with propellant takes hours and it's all fine, right? So why is SpaceX so focused on reducing this time? Excellent question. There are a few key reasons. First of all, SpaceX is all about efficiency. The propellant used in Starship is kept at cryogenic temperatures. For instance, their oxidizer of choice, oxygen, becomes liquid at temperatures below -183 degrees Celsius or -297 degrees Fahrenheit. That is really cold. And before the question comes up again, yes, there are other oxidizers than oxygen. So while it is possible to use it at this temperature, there is a clever way to get more performance out of it. Liquid oxygen won't freeze until -218 degrees Celsius or -340 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that there is a pretty wide window during which it stays liquid. Still very cold. Too hot and you have gas, too cold and you have ice. In between and you have a liquid. Here comes the trick. At a certain point it turns into liquid, but by lowering its temperature even further, the oxygen molecules move less quickly and become more densely packed. Simply put, cooling oxygen to around -207 degrees allows more oxidizer to fit into the rocket than at -183 degrees, which is the condensation temperature. This process is known as supercooling, and it also applies to methane, although its target temperature is closer to -180 degrees Celsius or -292 degrees Fahrenheit. However, these extremely low temperatures introduce a significant challenge: boil-off. Just like an ice cube melts outside the freezer due to heating, cryogenic propellant heats up when it leaves the insulated tanks of the fuel farm. As it warms, it expands and eventually turns into gas. This means that as the rocket is fueled, some of the propellant eventually heats up to the point where it has to be vented out as gas. Starship fuel tanks aren't insulated, like for example the orange space shuttle main tank. That orange stuff was insulation foam, so time is fuel. The same applies to the entire ground support equipment, which also warms up. By reducing the time it takes to fill Starship, you save a lot of money because there is less time for everything to soak up the heat, which means you lose less fuel. It is as simple as that. Another advantage is related to ice formation. And I don't mean the stuff on the outside. The freezing point of methane is really close to the boiling point of liquid oxygen. Usually it's not really a problem. You just insulate the tank and, for example, double wall the components inside and the problem is solved. However, Starship doesn't have insulation, again, and its tanks are connected using a common dome. This means that on one side you have liquid oxygen at -207 degrees and on the other liquid methane that freezes at -182 degrees. If the rocket were left in this state for a few hours, the methane would begin to freeze. This is why everything with Starship happens so quickly. As you fuel the booster and the ship, the flow of the propellant prevents freezing. Once fueling is complete, you need to launch within minutes or vent old and pump in fresh fuel to prevent ice formation. One might argue that rapid reusability is also a factor, but we're still far from the point where the difference between 90 and 45 minutes of fueling time is that critical. Now, was that a true full wet dress rehearsal? Here comes the surprise, possibly not. To understand what I mean, we have to put on a conspiracy theorist hat for a second. I don't have a hat. An interesting note about this wet dress rehearsal is that SpaceX seemed to use less propellant than during the full WDR for Flight 3. If you look at the pictures, you can clearly see that the booster has about 1 ring less propellant than usual. Additionally, a new road closure has been posted for May 28th with backup dates for the 29th and the 30th. What I'm saying is that maybe that recent test didn't go exactly as planned and we will see a redo of a full WDR. What do you think? Is another rehearsal needed or is it just a change in WDR procedures? Please let me know in the comments. Now, assuming that the most important non-flight test is done, they just have to replace a few tiles, install the flight termination charges, and we're good to go, right? Right? Well, yes. After the test, the upper stage of Starship was destacked and placed on a ship transport stand. Interestingly, the initial plans seemed to be that SpaceX would just roll back the prototype to install the missing tiles and add the decals at the second megabay. There even was a transportation closure for that event. And yet that move seems to have been aborted, with the workers opting to do these things right at the launch site. Things are getting mysterious. Despite all this, we have several signs pointing to a potential launch date. First of all, Elon Musk himself hinted on X that the launch will happen in less than 2 weeks. While we usually take Elon time with a grain of salt, this might not be necessary this time. Looking at the calendar for the WB-57, an observation plane used during Starship launches, we see that it's reserved for June 1st. There's your first clue, Sherlock. The reason for the reservation? Imagery support, which in this case might mean a Starship flight. But wait, there is more. On the Cameron County website we have a bunch of new closures. Some are for transporting tower segments, and we'll talk about them later, but there are also a few closures related to Starship testing. The one that interests us the most is a closure for June 1st, with backup dates for the 2nd and 3rd from 12 AM to 2 PM local time. The document regarding this closure clearly states that it's related to flight activity. So in the end we may see one of two scenarios. In the first one, the wet dress rehearsal went as planned. Workers will install the flight termination charges in a couple of days and Starship will launch on June 1st. In the second one, the wet dress rehearsal didn't go as planned, forcing SpaceX to redo the test on May 28th. Then Ship 29 will have to be destacked once again, allowing workers to install the charges, and it will still launch on the 1st or 2nd of June. The license and the NOTAMs and not Mars are still pending, but these will likely appear just a week or days before the launch. As the launch date approaches, we're also getting some details about the mission profile itself. But before I tell you about the objectives for Flight 4, here's a quick word about creating professional-looking websites from our sponsor. When I started Y, I faced several problems. I had a big scope and little funding. If I had Odoo back then, it would have helped me immensely. With Odoo, it's incredibly easy to start a shop. You won't believe it. Odoo offers all-in-one software with applications such as web creation, e-commerce, inventory, and more needed to start and grow your business. Odoo simplifies business management so entrepreneurs like myself have less to worry about. Experience firsthand how simple it is to create a shop using Odoo's AI-based web builder app. In minutes, I crafted a site for What About It showcasing our merchandise with no technical skills necessary. The intuitive configurator guided me through 4 simple steps: defining goals, choosing colors, adding pages, and selecting a theme, resulting in an auto-generated website. What used to take days to build is now almost an instant process. With the site builder, I can personalize every aspect, including merchandise options offering various colors and sizes. Just drag, drop, add content and features, configure payment methods, and publish in just a few hours to start upselling and cross-selling. Kickstart your online presence with Odoo and click below to start your business and watch it flourish. Okay, back to the launch objectives. Interestingly, it appears that SpaceX might be actually scaling down the objectives for this launch. Why is that? Ars Technica conducted an interview with Lisa Watson-Morgan, who is responsible for the Human Landing System program at NASA, and she revealed the goals for Flight 4. Firstly, we won't see a propellant transfer demonstration during this launch. This was a test carried out for NASA's Tipping Point program, and as far as we can tell, the objective was achieved, so there is simply no need to repeat it. More unexpectedly, there won't be a payload bay test, and more importantly, SpaceX isn't planning to attempt Raptor ignition in space. Hold up, Felix, what's the point then? Why even bother with a launch if they won't test anything new? You see, Flight 3 was more of an assessment to determine the current progress of the Starship program as a whole. Is the Ship Control Authority sufficient for orbital attempts? Can they maneuver in space? Is the payload bay design performing as expected? Can they just go ahead and launch with Starlinks on board? Flight 3 answered these questions, and unfortunately it revealed that most of this stuff still isn't ready for full-blown missions. This is where the hardware-rich program can bite back. Things like the payload bay door likely have to be completely reworked, and retrofitting it would simply take too much time. It may turn out that none of the Block 1 prototypes will ever fly Starlink satellites on board. This is why, in my opinion, with Flight 4, SpaceX wants to focus on the most critical elements, landing the booster and surviving re-entry. Neither of these objectives was fully achieved during Flight 3, but they are crucial for prototype recovery. Here we can sort of draw a parallel to the high-altitude flight tests of Starship. The goal of the prototypes from SN8 to SN15 was simply to land the hardware in one piece, demonstrating that it was possible and worth further development. Currently it is the same with booster catching and ship re-entry. These should be possible on paper, but unless SpaceX can prove they work, investing more money and time in these parts of the Starship development might not be justifiable. Ultimately, heat tiles may not be the best solution, and SpaceX might return to the drawing board to explore alternatives like transpirational cooling. On the other hand, the official flight plan hasn't been revealed, so SpaceX might be planning some additional tests that weren't mentioned in the interview. We'll just have to wait and see. Regarding that next launch, I have a big announcement to make. I'll be in town for Flight 4. The announcement is about what happens after the launch though. We'll have a party. It's a bit of a tradition already, and I've done this before, but this time you can grab a spot and be part of it. Head over to raptorroos.com with one R in the middle and fill out the waiver. The party is on launch day, and after the launch, as soon as the roads open again, raptorroos.com. The link is in the description. I am looking forward to seeing you at the IFT4 after launch party. A spot is $20 if you sign the waiver before showing up, and $25 if you decide to make it a very spontaneous trip. Spots are limited, and the link is in the description. Now, before we continue with Starship news, we've looked into our channel metrics, and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial, and ground photos of SpaceX's progress, and countless other extras on top. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Back to the launch site, fellow space enthusiasts. We've focused mainly on the 4th flight of Starship, but that's not the only exciting thing happening at the gateway to Mars. Turning our attention to the former suborbital site, the infrastructure here is disappearing at an incredible rate. After removing methane storage and water tanks, workers have moved on to the smaller vertical black vessels. Some of these tanks will likely be reused as they were transported towards the Sanchez site. John also captured the bigger methane tank waiting near the port of Brownsville, suggesting it will be shipped elsewhere. Maybe someone bought this tank, or it will support another SpaceX project. Additionally, we're seeing an increasing number of tower segments transported from the port of Brownsville to the Sanchez site. Although the move didn't happen as quickly as originally planned, it should be complete by the time you're watching this. On May 20th, we saw the rollout of arguably the most important piece of the tower, Segment 1. This segment is connected to the concrete base of the tower, and without it, SpaceX wouldn't be able to begin the construction of the new OLED. Then 2 days later, segment number 2 was moved. This leaves just section 6 waiting at the port, although, as I've said, it likely moved before this episode goes live. The Sanchez site now has sections 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Sections 4 and 5 are still here in Florida at the Roberts Road facility, along with the ship quick disconnect arm and the chopsticks. Hopefully they will be moved to Starbase soon. It will also be interesting to see how SpaceX handles the ground support equipment situation and where it stores the propellant. There are a few options. First, they could simply hook up the new tower to the tank farm of the first tower, a common fuel farm. This would be a simpler operation than building a dedicated system, but the downside is that both towers likely couldn't be used in quick succession unless the current farm holds enough fuel for 2 launches, which I doubt. This probably wouldn't be an issue now, but in the future, when launches have to be a day or just hours apart, this would become a bottleneck. Alternatively, SpaceX could build a new tank farm dedicated to the second tower. Simple horizontal hot dog tanks positioned behind the tower, the exact copy of what already exists at Starbase, minus the vertical vessels. Finally, given the new tower's likely orientation, SpaceX could install massive sphere tanks similar to those at Launch Complex 39A or 39B. These could potentially store enough propellant to support multiple Starship launches, or at least handle a wet dress rehearsal or a scrub without the need for immediate refueling. What will SpaceX choose? We will likely find out soon. If you have any ideas, be sure to let us know in the comments. Okay, enough about big rockets, let's talk about something smaller but equally interesting. Rocket Factory Augsburg has recently hit a significant milestone. This German company is working towards revolutionizing Europe's access to space with their new rocket RFA-1. It's a 3-stage rocket capable of delivering up to 1,600 kilograms or 3,500 pounds to low Earth orbit, comparable to another European rocket, the Vega. The main difference, however, lies in RFA's approach. As a new space company, they accept the possibility of hardware loss and are open to unconventional building techniques. This is why RFA-1 was designed with mass production in mind, utilizing stainless steel tanks, many off-the-shelf parts, and incorporating 3D printing. In theory, this is the perfect recipe for a rocket that Europe could really use right now. In practice, however, the rocket has been undergoing an extensive test campaign and has yet to take off for the first time. This may change relatively soon though. Take a look at this. In May, the first stage of RFA-1 was moved to Saxaford Spaceport, an orbital launch site located on the Shetland Islands in Scotland. That's a very remote location. Once there, it was positioned on the launch mount and workers began preparing it for the hot fire test campaign. Finally, on May 16th, the first stage ignited its engines for the first time. 4 Helix engines were tested, with each one turned on 4 seconds apart, resulting in 8 seconds of simultaneous operation. One thing to note here is that the first stage was equipped with 5 engines, so either one didn't ignite or they simply tested just 4. Now the rocket will receive the remaining Helix engines and conduct additional firings. Meanwhile, the upper stage of the rocket is in the process of being certified for flight. If everything goes according to plan, the full stack will arrive on the pad sometime around August. Fingers crossed that the plan works out, as RFA has the potential to become Europe's SpaceX. In other exciting news, Blue Origin has returned to flight. No, not orbital, but still. New Shepard, Blue Origin's touristic suborbital rocket, had a pretty consistent launch cadence until September 2022. During an uncrewed mission back then, the NS-3 booster failed on its 9th flight, triggering the launch escape system. This incident sparked an FAA investigation that lasted over a year. And we complain when SpaceX can't finish one in a month. During this time, engineers made numerous design changes to help prevent future engine failures. Despite a successful uncrewed mission in December, New Shepard didn't fly with a crew until May 19th of this year, shortly after the investigation was closed. That's almost 2 years without crewed launches. Fortunately, it looks like Blue Origin learned its lesson, as the ascent during this mission went perfectly. However, after separation, one of the 3 parachutes failed to fully inflate during the landing. While this isn't a major issue since the capsule is designed to land safely with just 2 parachutes, it's something worth investigating. If one fails to inflate, the same could potentially happen to the rest of them. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and it helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you again in the next episode. Then at minus. It's definitely getting hot in here. Fully of liquid. 183. Dude, there are so many numbers. This means that on one side, this means